Good evening, everybody. Zoom is fighting me as usual, but we're here on time, ready to go. Hope everybody's had a good week. Um, Prayers for our classmate Natalie. She's dealing with a lot. Also, one of our other classmates, Jonathan. We were in class on Sunday and got a call. His dad had a stroke. For prayers for both of them. That elder care is tough, 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 tough. Um, So Anne Marie got her OMA graded this week, got it in and got it graded. So she's leading the pack on that. I see Heather's got hers ready to be graded. So we'll get that moved on. Um, so as we always do, let me share my screen and let's look and see where we are on on our weekly schedule. I believe this is our last weekly class. And then weekend after next. I believe we will be in Charlotte um, for our case study presentations on Saturday and TD Jakes on confidants, constituents, and comrades. Um, and so that's a good one. We'll do the short version. I won't bore you to death and make you watch the hour and a half version. I will watch the 30-minute version and we can skip through some of it, but it's a good discussion to have. So that's where we are tonight. We're going to do interviewing. Anne Marie also had one on her discussion board 6 that I want to highlight tonight. If we want to talk about it a little bit, that's a good thing too. We're not in a hurry. She talked about ensuring you have the proper ratios on field trips. That's why you need to find the field trip policy. I've probably told the story where I made the mistake early in my career of getting adult volunteers to go, and I got a non-custodial parent, and she about got us killed in Asheboro in the tornado down there. Um, but what I was trying to do, and the reason why I did it is I was trying to not take a bunch of teachers away from the building, but still, because it was such a large field trip, the duty of that adult student ratio that you have to have. So that's very important. Just like 1 for 45 on supervision in cafeterias, gymnasiums, and for large crowds. There's also a standard for field trips, and your district sets that. And if they don't, you can assume it's 1 to 15. And that may not be enough on certain type of field trips. So make sure you check that one out. But what I wanted us to talk about for a minute here, and I'll even stop my share, is duty of care. That Anne Marie she referred to the duty of care. District policy emphasizes above all else. There doesn't explicitly outline accident procedure, which are covered during CDL training. They establish a clear duty of care. All right. So let's talk about duty of care. Let me stop my share. What do we think duty of care is? And this is not just off the top of my head stuff. I'm going someplace with this that links back to our lesson on this one, the secondary lesson, which is negligence. What is the
When I was writing that post, the idea is that it is our responsibility to make sure students are safe, and that their well-being is taken care of, and that includes their physical, their emotional, their socio-emotional. Like it's all aspects of the child are safe and taken care of.
Yeah, and as Anne Marie pointed out, the problem is it's not defined well. We don't with that duty of care standard is not defined well. And it's going to be up to a court, unfortunately, in a civil case to decide whether we provided the appropriate level of care for these students. First is, did we have enough adults there? And second is when something bad went wrong, did we provide the appropriate level of care? Now, there's 3 standards of negligence: misfeasance, malfeasance, nonfeasance. So let's go through those in that order. Misfeasance is I did the wrong thing. I didn't know it was wrong. Malfeasance is I did the wrong thing knowing it was wrong. And then nonfeasance, I had a duty of care and I didn't fulfill it. I had a duty to act and I did not fulfill it. So somewhere in between those three, every time there's an accident, there's always the possibility that we're going to end up in court on a negligence claim that we didn't do standard of care, or we did the wrong thing, or we should have done something and didn't, or we did the wrong thing even though we didn't know it was the wrong thing, we did it. And so those are the standards that you must understand and know. Now, do they expect you to be a medical doctor? No, but they do expect a certain standard of care. This would be something that I would enter into a conversation if I were a school principal with the legal department of my district. That's one of those things that I would get to that fairly quickly under my administration. I'm not sure you might could as an assistant principal, but definitely as a principal, what, especially if I wasn't familiar with the district, what is the level of care? Again, that's one of these factors in today's world. The field trip would have to be of exceptional value for me to take it to begin with. But that's one of those discussions I would have on level of care. If something does go wrong, um, what would we be expected to do? Now, obviously, you got to call 911 first, but after that, what am I going to do? I mean, the problem you risk is not so much not doing anything, but doing something that's beyond your expertise and get hit with that misfeasance charge that you did something wrong because you didn't know it was wrong. But the problem is because you didn't have the proper training. To the point where these are the kinds of things that you get hit a lot on negligence lawsuits. Kid gets hurt, no matter how it happens, you can expect a negligence lawsuit to be coming under one of those three tiers: misfeasance, malfeasance, nonfeasance. A lot of times we provide care beyond the means that we have or the expertise that we have. And I would caution you, I guess that's what my rant tonight's about is um, if you're going to go and you don't have somebody who's a first responder trained, you better get trained yourself. I would not go on a field trip without a first responder. That's my advice to you, and that's where I was headed with this. So it's not just simply how many adults you have. Here's the point. It's the kind of adults that you have. That's important as well. See, we just think as long as we got, that's what I'm talking about. My young dumb self, I just thought as long as I had, enough adults, but it was more important the kind of adults that I had. I had an irresponsible adult, and not in Dale's opinion, I should have realized if she's a non-custodial parent, she's not an appropriate person to be supervising the field trip. If I go on a field trip and I take people and I don't take a first responder with me, that's negligence on my part. I'm probably going to get hit with that, and I'm probably going to lose because I should have foreseeability. That's in the law. I should have foreseen that if something happened, I needed a first responder, somebody who knows CPR, somebody who can do basic first aid, those kinds of things until the paramedics or whoever 911 sends gets there. That's that piece right there that I see in court all the time. I got news feed on my phone and my different devices, and that's the one right there. Well-meaning people just get throttled in the court system nowadays, and you need to understand that. So the point of the exercise is not just the number of people you have, but the kind of people. I would not go on a field trip without a first responder. It would be my advice to you. All right. Anybody have anything else that they would like to add? All right. We talked about system of discipline. Let me share my screen. I want to pull this. So I got that. Close that. I want to go back, get that out of the way and go back here. I'm going to go back here. Okay. All right. We talked about this one last week. I won't bore us, but again, lack of having a disciplinary system and then being snowed under with discipline referrals, we know that that's not smart. I've already talked about that one. I won't belabor the point on that one. That was the only other one that I wanted to point out again on 5 and 6, since this is our last time together. School discipline eats up your time, um, but you can't be the person who doesn't understand the correlates. If you don't have a strong school-wide disciplinary system that teachers participate in, there you're never going to be able to process all the discipline that they send you. Again, we need to be champions again, but people think, well, I'm doing this for teachers. You need to be a champion for kids. It's not good for them to be sent out all the time. Um, Teachers want you to process their discipline, and I think you should. But we also can't just be doing it. If we're doing it night and day, there's a problem, and kids are not getting what they need. All right. So interviewing materials. I have several documents here under interviewing materials, and I want to start with this document, and we'll kick off on the interviewing tonight. To get your first administrative job, generally there's 4 different levels of interviews that you will go through. Sometimes they combine them, sometimes they're not in this order, but generally they're in this order and they're separate. So the first interview that you will have is the applicant pool interview, and it takes on several different forms. Sometimes it's the old strength finder dispositional from Gallup, and they'll ask you a series of 12 questions, five series of 12 for 60, and they score you. Now, the trick about those is to be certain of your answer, and they'll ask you landmine questions. I think we've talked about this before. And so if I ask, and I'll start with Andrew. Andrew, unmute yourself. If it paid exactly the same, would you rather be a school administrator and work with adults, or a teacher and work with kids if it paid exactly the same?
Say a teacher.
And see, that's why, and see, that's good that you know that. But of course, you won't progress to the next level of interviews if you say
Okay.
that. What they're looking for is for people who understand that when you move into administration, that you work with adults. You work for kids through adults. And if you don't understand that, so I told you the story of one of the ladies that works with me who was a principal fellow at UNC Charlotte. She just retired. She's administrator in a charter school down at the beach. She's doing the early retirement thing down at the beach. And first time she went through the process to be a principal fellow, I mean, everybody knew she was a star, and she didn't get it the first time. And they were doing a debrief on why, and she said she wanted to be a champion for kids. I mean, excuse me, for teachers. She wanted to be a champion for teachers, rather than for kids. That's kind of a disclaimer when you're trying to get into an administrative job, is that um, you're a champion for kids by working with teachers. And if you just want to work with kids, you need to stay at that level. You're not going to get to work with kids at the administrative level. You're going to have to work with adults. And when we say work with adults, that means supervise them, not be their champion. You have to be their supervisor. That all kind of knits together in that. And so the whole idea of the first level of the interview is to kind of direct the people who want to be in administration and understand what it's about. That it's about supervising adults, not being their friend, not being their champion, but being a champion for kids, but doing it by supervising and working with, growing and developing the adults. So that a lot of those first level questions are going to try to separate those people out in terms of where their heart really is. They'll also ask you a question about, are you an on time person? And I'll ask that I'll ask Heather that question. Are you an on time person?
Yes, I am.
Every time, all time. I'm always early. Why is that important in our business? We run schools by time, don't we? Bell ring, go to class. Bell ring, go to next class. Buses arrive at a certain time. They leave at a certain time. Lunch is at a certain time every day. I told you I had an assistant principal candidate who came in and said, I'm not really a morning person. We were done. It's an early start high school. We were there every morning at 6 o'clock. We started getting buses in at 6:20. Breakfast was over at 6:45, 10 minutes to get to class. Bell rang for the first class at 6:55. Well, you mean you're not a Mormon person? We get out every day at 2:15. He was just getting up about that time. No, we can't use you. You just need to be cognizant. Beth, your question is are you a competitive person? Do you want to win?
I am not, which is fine. I am not good for certain roles.
And so for a school administrator, then they won't pick you. You won't go to the second level. Why? We have a state report card in North and South Carolina. We keep score, don't we? It's all about winning, making a good number go up or a bad number go down. Thankfully, all of you, none of you had to go through the MSA program with me at Gardner Webb, the traditional one, because if you had, on the first night, what I would have told you is if you don't think test scores don't matter, you're one of those people that don't think that they truly represent what a kid knows and that they aren't important, get out now. This program's not for you. Our job is to make a good number go up and the bad number go down. And they'll ask you that at the very first level interview, if you in a roundabout way. And so you have to understand that you know, that it's a competitive environment. And that's what they're looking for. They're also looking at your dispositional behaviors. Sometimes they will do that. They'll look at those. Let me share my screen and we'll look at that. Sometimes they'll combine some of these. I've seen a lot of that going on lately. They'll do the dispositional behaviors, communication, soft skills. They'll kind of quiz you on those as well. I've seen them adding some reasoning activities lately. And you can tell the one that I've got is old. Because the guy was out for a week and he only got 22 emails. I get that before breakfast every morning. I average 105 a day. And so there it is. And so what they have you do is work through each of the emails, each of the scenarios, and they have you classify the emails as either urgent and important, not urgent, but important, urgent, but not important, and then not urgent and not important. This would be like spam, And so, and then they have you tell what action you would take with each of these. This is a reasoning activity. This has become more and more common. Now, here's the landmine. All these have a landmine. You got to understand every one of these levels of interviews have landmines in them. That if you get that wrong, no matter how good you are, it blows you up and you're out. The landmine on this one is right here. Take a minute and think about that. Is there such a thing as that? No. So if you put anything in quadrant 3, it's like looking, when I was a kid, we'd flip to the back of the math book and look for the answer. That's what they'll do. If you got anything in quadrant 3, how could it be urgent, but it's not important? That means you're not a good rational thinker, not a good reasoning person. So they'll give you stuff like this. And then finally, at that first level, what has become they do virtual interviews, but a lot of those virtual interviews are grouped with data analysis. Data analysis has become a real big thing now. Well, they give you a data scenario and ask you to work through it and come up with a plan. A lot of that's done virtually. And if you're on virtually, even if there's nobody facing it, always look at the screen. Now, I wish I was smarter. Y'all do too. I just keep my pad right here and refer to it every now and then, but I try to memorize it. I'm still old school. I still try to remember my lesson plan. But in a quick and dirty like this, where they give you 30 minutes, here's the trick. Get your yellow pad stickies and turn it whatever so that the stickies on the edge of your, and you can put yourself notes around your computer, but don't ever look down. Don't ever look away from the screen. Don't ever look over at notes. And speak extemporaneously. And so they'll give you a data activity kind of like this one. A performance task, and it will be much like the app cell that I gave you. And that's one of the reasons why I picked that evidence for y'all to do. I knew that y'all know how to do that better than me. But this is exactly what they will give you in an interview scenario. It's the app cell, where they give you all the data about your school and all these things, and then they have you to do a plan out of it. Data points, but that they will give you the scenario, and then you will put a plan together, just like you do for the app cell. That's become the most popular. That and coupling it with that and doing it virtually. A lot of times they'll have a series of questions on the virtual, and so let me pull that up. And sometimes there won't even be a person on the screen. But these are generally the kinds of things that they ask in a virtual interview. They do the data dive. That kind of concludes it. But they'll do the first 30 minutes is these virtual questions like this. What past experiences have you had when you were under immense pressure? You know, certain groups can't learn. What would you do? See right here, they do the data is embedded in that right there. It is. That's what I'm talking about. They give you 30 minutes. This time they gave them 25, and then you talk about that in the virtual interview. Sometimes they'll do a video and have you do a mini NESIS evaluation. This is one of the drop dead questions that's also from dispositional behaviors. If there's a system policy you didn't agree with and you don't think it's in the best interest of students, what would you do? And the answer is, of course, that's a landmine question. I'll follow the policy. I'll follow the law. Describe something you initiated at your school, time when you faced criticism, share something that's not on your resume. Now, that's a landmine question. This is a landmine question. We did this not long ago. We had an opening at Gardner Webb. We had this lady in, and we do virtuals with them, and then we bring them in. And she was one of the 3 people that we brought to campus. She looked really good virtually. We brought her in, and that was one of the questions that I added. And tell us something that wasn't on your resume. And she told us that she was a twin. She lived with her sister, never been married, and had 20 cats. I wish I was making that up. I don't really remember anything she said after that. I think I took a nap. That's a landmine question. Be very careful with that. You can expose the side of your personality or some quirk or something that raises red flags for people. What they're doing is they're opening the door for you to let yourself out. That is not something, they're not interested in you. But a lot of times people, I collect stamps or, something that's just kind of off the wall crazy or whatever. That gives the chance for that crazy to get out. Be careful on that. Be very, very careful on that question. But again, what they're doing mostly now is either putting a reasoning activity together with a dispositional behavior activity. Sometimes they're doing 2 initials, 2 number 1 interviews. They'll do the dispositional reasoning first, and then they'll do the virtual data dive second. You make the cut, you get a virtual interview, and then they bring you in. the virtual data dive is they're pairing those. I've got one. If you don't know what soft skills to highlight during that first interview, I've got a quick and dirty right here. Let me share my screen. We can let that one go. You can do it. Here are the soft skills that you should try to, in that, if you're doing that soft skill reasoning, these are the kinds of things you should try to highlight in that one. If they ask you about them, or if you can slip them in, right here. Emotional work ethic, how hard you'll work, your positive attitude, your communication skills, again, your time management. Remember, school works on time, and your self-confidence. If you can work those in, that's what they're looking for in those dispositional reasoning, dispositional, and that type of interview. These are the 5 things that they're looking for. So if you can work those in, and again, on the other side, on the virtual interview, they have a couple landmines, but they won't know if you can do the data dive. But again, if you get asked to tell something that's not on your resume, be very careful about that. Understand that's a landmine question. They don't really care. They're going to give you the opportunity to let yourself out of the process, that you've got 20 cats and live with your sister. All right. So that's that one. Now, if and when you get through that 1 or 2 rounds of that kind of either dispositional reasoning and or virtual data, then you'll get to a second level, a group interview. Now, this is not the time to show them how smart you are. Let me say that again. This is not the time to try to show them how smart you are. This is about communication with civilians, with stakeholders, people that are not in our business. They'll bring in parents, community members. They'll even bring in some teachers. And if it's a secondary school, they might even bring in a kid. They'll bring in the basically the school improvement team type of team. What they want to see is if you can communicate with different stakeholder groups without insulting them. By saying something like, making reference to a PLC. Oh, you don't know what that means. I'm sorry. Well, you just call them stupid. I set up a interview system. Now, discount my story here. Be careful not to sprain a shoulder, because I end up looking good in this story, but you'll pardon my behavior for that. I got asked by a fairly rural school district to come and set up their principal of the year system. They'd never had a principal of the year from their district make it even to the regional, much less a state winner or on to the national. They had never, and they felt like they had some really good principals. And so they called me. I don't know if I have any expertise in this, but I was state principal of the year. So I actually went through, I won the district, I won the region, and I won the state. So they knew that. I mean, I won it a couple of times, but that's another story. And so whether I have any expertise or not, don't think better of me. I went and set up their system. And they asked me if I would lead it the first time through. And I did, their central office people, the first time through. And we had this really nice young man who came in and had a nice suit. He looked, kind of like a fashion model. And he was really sharp young man, except he brought a notebook and he read a lot of stuff in his interview. But one of the things that he would use acronyms all the time. And then he kept saying, oh, y'all don't know what that means. And he'd go back and explain himself and all that. And when he left, there was a lady sitting there and she just looked like a regular housewife, and she was very pregnant. But she was a very high-powered attorney out of Charlotte that commuted to work a couple hours every day, and he didn't know that. He just assumed she was, somebody from the community. And first thing she asked me when he left was, how many times did he call me stupid? I said, I believe I counted 6. So that's what we're talking about, that kind of thing. Don't assume that they know anything. So what you have to do is take your jargon, your knowledge, and break it down at a level that doesn't insult them, but doesn't talk down to them either. And so that's the trick of the group interview. We're seeing if you can communicate with stakeholders. So let me share my screen. I've made a slideshow. And I won't spend all night on this, but I've got one slide. This is kind of your pop quiz here. All right. Briefly describe what you perceive as your leadership style. Don't say transformational or participative or any of that because they don't know what that means. You describe it. Now, if you read this, you'll see that I just described a transformational leader. Earning respect, child-centered, focus on issues, avoid conflict, striving to be fair, courteous, respectful, positive, approachable, open to change and new ideas. That's a transformational leader. But don't say I'm a transformational leader. Assessment-driven instruction. We often hear that assessment drives instruction. How would you help a new teacher understand the use of data? All right. Here's your pop quiz. What's this a definition of? Where you go together as a group of teachers and do data analysis, develop teaching strategies, and plan collaboratively. That would be a PLC. But don't say PLC because they don't know what that means. And double don't say, I do PLCs and then say, oh, you don't know what that means, and then describe it. Run over them and then back over them coming back the other way. So I've got a PowerPoint here that the kinds of questions that you will get, but the whole idea is can you give an answer that doesn't use acronyms, jargon, that doesn't talk over their head, but also doesn't treat them stupid. That's the whole notion of this one. Describe the instructional practices that you'd like to see as you walk through the building right here. Instead of saying, I want to see, high yield strategies, I want to see best practices, effective use of resources, and engagement with the kids. Be very, kind of to the point with this one. I mean, we could go down the Nisus rabbit hole on this one. They don't know what Nisus is. They don't know who Marzano is. But that's what this is right here on the screen. So again, that's the idea. At the group level, they're looking not to see what you know, but can you communicate with stakeholders who are not in the business? That's the second level. Now, the third level interview is with the administrative team or the principal. Now, this is where you get to show how smart you are and how much all that money you spent at Gardner Webb. This is your opportunity right here. I mean, they're going to ask you about your background, your experience, why you want to be an administrator, your professional goals, parent-school communication, social faculty function, greatest. Okay, right here. They're going to ask, I've got all kinds on here. This is the landmine question. Now, what's going to happen is they're going to get you talking about yourself and feeling comfortable, and you're using your jargon, and boy, you feel like you're in there. And they're going to slip this landmine question in and with a smile on their face like your colleagues that you don't even know that it's a landmine question. What's your greatest professional strength and what is your greatest professional weakness? There is a right answer here. Here is the right answer. Your weaknesses are always based on inexperience. I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to. I know that I've got to get NESIS certified so I can do teacher evaluations. I have not seen the discipline module in Power School. I've only seen Power School from a teacher, but I know I've got to get trained in order to put that data in there. Because what is it that manual says, 2448? I can't let them stack up to the end of the week. I understand that. All the things that you know what you don't know. That I'm going to learn this stuff. I'm going to do this stuff. I can, inexperience I can overcome. My strengths are dispositional. I'm honest. I'm hardworking. Back to those 5 things that we're looking for. I'm a fully formed adult. These are my strengths. That won't change. My weaknesses are simply experience based, but given the opportunity, I'll overcome them as well. So your strengths are always dispositional. Your weaknesses are always experience based, period. Never deviate from that. If you mention any dispositional weakness, that won't go well for you. Won't go well for you. So make sure you understand at that level what they're trying to do is see if you know what you don't know. They want to know what you know, but they also, more importantly, want to know what you don't know. That are you cognizant of that? Because they can train you if you know and you're willing. Who's the hardest person in the world to teach? Somebody that thinks they know it all. That's what they're trying to avoid. A know-it-all that's got a lot of book knowledge but has never done anything, and you can't tell them anything. I work with people like that every day. So I don't try to tell them anything. I just wait for them, to do whatever they do, hit their thumb with the hammer, and then they come whining to me to fix it. Okay. It's just easier to fix it and going about my business. I've stopped trying to tell people, that's a damn fool idea. They don't have the experience to understand why. Then I'd have to explain why that's a damn fool idea. So, but if you don't know anything about school, they had a doctoral send out her survey during August during the opening of school, and then they were all the day after Labor Day, a month later, they were all concerned that she hadn't gotten one survey response. Duh. We got bigger fish to fry the month of August. We're trying to get our rooms ready, teachers. We're trying to do PD. We got required work days. If anybody had ever been in school that knew anything, that was paying attention, wasn't asleep or drunk, don't send a survey out in August. I can't help people like that. I'm not going to argue with them. So when she came and cried to me, I said, all right, I'll fix it. And I called up some people and fixed it. It was just easier than try to explain to them. You don't know anything about school. Don't really care. Move on. That's what I'm talking about. We're not going to hire people that think they know everything and have no experience. They don't really know anything other than what they read. We're not going to hire those people because we don't have time to deal with them. If you'll listen and learn, we'll work with you till the cows come home. But if you're one of them hard heads, I ain't even got time for that. You got to get stuff done. Remember, LS people, we just get, we're just tasked. Let's just get it done. We're not interested in why. Again, Alicia said she wanted to get up on the roof. I don't care why. I've got a ladder, or I know a man with a ladder. I don't care why. Let's just get it. Let's go. Let's do something. That's what we do. And so they're looking for people that if they don't know how to do it, we can train them to get it done. And if they don't know but think they do already, then we don't have time to deal with them. So that's the landmine question. Acknowledge the things that you don't have experience at, that you know what it is. You haven't done it yet, though, but that you will get trained, prepared, and you won't be one of them hard heads or one of them that avoids the training and thinking if I don't go get trained, they won't make me do that. And you can't hold up your end. We all know the BT and the valuation schedule for teachers. That doesn't change just because we got an AP that's a nitwit and won't go get trained. That just means the rest of us have to do more. That will not endear you to your colleagues. All right. And then the final one of the four, you will have to meet with the area superintendent or the superintendent. Even as an AP nowadays. And I'll tell you who started that in North Carolina. And it caught on like wildfire, was Mo Green, who just got elected the state superintendent. When Mo was superintendent, of course, I worked with Mo in Charlotte, but when he was superintendent in Guilford, that was one of the things that he did, and it became kind of a cause celebrity across the state. It's that Mo is sitting in on assistant principal interviews, having them. He said, they're most likely going to become my principals. If I can't project that they're going to be a principal, why would I hire them as an AP? I'm not here to hire career APs. I hire them projecting them to be principal or not. And so you will meet with the superintendent or the area superintendent. Now, they won't talk about how to run a third shift for lunch in the high school. That's not what you'll talk about. You'll talk about big picture ideas like 21st century skills or future ready students or college and career ready. You'll talk about big stuff like that. How do you go about doing that? You'll talk about the vision that the state and the district has. You'll talk about the strategic plan. You'll talk about things like that. Now, this document right here, what I like about it, it doesn't just talk about 21st century, but it talks about how you would go in a realistic sense about how you would implement those. And future ready, again, how would you go about that? Not just do you know what it is, but how would you go about making sure that was happening in your building? That's what this one right here means. So, big picture idea. Won't talk about discipline referrals at that one. You'll talk about the district strategic plan, college and career ready, future ready, those kinds of things, the big ticket ideas. Can you be a broader thinker than just how to do bus duty? And I've told you, there's not a real steep learning curve on bus duty. And just wear a coat long enough to cover you behind in the winter and don't get run over. I mean, after that, there's not a lot to say about bus duty. He's not going to talk to you about bus duty. But he is going to talk to you, or she is going to talk to you. You need to be prepared for that. Understand what are the big ticket items. First thing I'd do is I'd go look at the district strategic plan. I'd know what the state plan for future ready college and career, those kinds of things. But I'd look at the district strategic plan. What does the superintendent think is important? That's what I'd be prepped for, the district strategic plan. All right. So that's the 4 levels of interviews that we have. Now, I've got a couple of items here that are just general stuff. Five questions never to ask. Now, they'll ask you, do you have any questions? No, you don't have any questions. Again, that's a landmine. These are the things that people say in interviews. When will I be? How long am I going to have to be an AP? Forever, because you're not going to get to be one of those. Don't talk about salary until you get to the end of the process. Raises, salaries, national board pay, don't do that. Now, what sort of flex time options do you have? None. I've told you the story about Allison. They fired her for it, got a hog killing with her because she applied and got a job at a late start elementary school because they had an early start campus too. And she told them that as soon as she took the job, she had to leave 30 minutes before the bell rang and an hour before teachers could leave. You can leave now. And any question that shows that you've not been listening, that's why I said you don't have any questions. Flex time options. You know that comp time is illegal in North and South Carolina. Let me say that again. I know some of you districts run it, but it's illegal. Right to work states, there is no comp time. They can't pay you for work you haven't done yet. There is no flex time. There is no comp time. And I'll explore that further in just a minute. Five things you need to bring on the interview. Now, this is kind of controversial. A resume, cover letter, your references, all that. A strategic plan, kind of like a 90-day plan of what you would do if you got the job. This is more for principals, but we do like to see that. A portfolio. Now, one of the things that we do in the traditional MSA program, we have them build a portfolio of artifacts so they can take, some pictures, items, things that they can see that. If you've got something that they can physically see. But right here, a strategic plan. I don't know that you need to write one, but you need to dig into their report card and their teacher working condition or parent survey, and you have an idea of what their strengths and weaknesses are so you can speak to, the kinds of things that if they ask you questions around a strategic plan. You need to know the district strategic plan, but that's what I was talking about for the superintendent, but it wouldn't be a bad idea for the school or the school district strategic plan. And you have something that you can speak to that on your own. That's very smart. Make sure your references are current and that the addresses or the email addresses and phone numbers are live. Cover letter should be addressed to the school and speak to the job and not be generic. And um, your resume should be that and not have everything from back, What we really want to know is about your education, your experience since you graduated from high school. We want to know where you were every day since you graduated from high school. You could have been in the penitentiary. If you got gaps in your resume, that's our first assumption is using jail. If you've got gaps in your resume. So Lorraine Biggerstaff said she had gaps in hers, and I said, Lorraine, and she said, well, I was waitressing. My husband's military. We were moving around. I said, that makes me want to hire you more. What are you talking about? That's not embarrassing. That would make me want to hire you more. That you got out and hustled and made a living. There should be no gaps in your resume since high school. Should start with college. And there should be where you were job wise ever since college, or ever since high school. I was in college here and I had these jobs. That should be on your resume. Don't list every honor that you ever got. I was teacher of the week. No, we want just the meat of the thing. 10 things you should know about your job interviewer. Basically, all that is they're trying to find the best person, and it's not their job to get you experience. So that speaks to Dale's top 10, and this is my top 10 for interviewing. Okay. Dress for success. I don't care if you wear a wig, wear your good wig. I had a fellow who wore his bad wig to an interview and I wouldn't hire him. He did. He wore a bad, and I told you it was tilted about 15 degrees to the side like the bill of a ball cap, and I couldn't see if he was looking at me or past my shoulder. I couldn't hire him. If make a good impression. Take a 2-page evidence summary. This is back to that strategic plan or evidence. Show them some work that you've done if you can. During your program, if they want to see something that you've done, your work product, that's big now. Just like that data analysis, they want to see your work product. Research both the school and the administration. That's what I was talking about. The strategic plan, know who they are, look at the state report card, TWC, know the backgrounds of the administrative team, know what you don't know. That's when they, again, so that you can speak to that when they ask you what your weaknesses are. I've seen EVOS for our student learning outcomes in South Carolina for my class, but I haven't seen it for the school, but I know it's a thing. Power School, I've seen some of the modules, but not all, not the discipline one, because I've not been approved to do that, but I will. Power Source, that was a data collection. I use that as a generic term for anything that has to do with evaluations, RTI, PBIs, MTSS, finance, be able to speak to instruction in the bottom line, student achievement, no matter what. But these things, if you know something about them, good. If you don't, acknowledge that you're going to have to get better at them. That's that weakness. But that's experience based. Have a humorous anecdote about how you were able to turn a negative into a positive. Be prepared to discuss hours and responsibilities honestly. The building won't get any closer to your house or the traffic any better simply because you got the job there. And if you have child care responsibilities, you need to be able to discuss that honestly. Don't take the job under false pretenses because they'll fire you. Know your strengths and weaknesses. We've already talked about that. Don't discuss salary, experience, steps, those things. Don't engage in gossip or negative talk. Principals go to meetings all the time. They know one another. And then don't interview for a job you wouldn't take just for the experience. That goes back to that document, things you need to know about your interviewer. Their job is to find the best person, not to give you experience in interviewing. I had a lady come to my high school one time and interviewed for a job. And she said, "Oh, I wouldn't work here, but I didn't want to know what questions. So when I go interview over at school where I do want to work, I can't, she said that to me. It's a waste of interviewers' time and word will spread." So I called Wayne over at Providence and told him what happened. He said, "Well, I wouldn't hire her." And he didn't. And that's the way it works. And then once you get your job, this is the important corollary that goes with this. Know everybody's name and what they do. At your first faculty meeting, when you get your first administrative job, barring this, move around the room and have the staff introduce themselves. Proximity and eye contact are important. Now, thankfully, just, luck of the draw, I have eidetic memory. And so I just got the last year's annual, memorized 205 people and just called them all by name. I had people that come to watch me do that. It's just a trick. It's not really a sign of intelligence. It's just a trick, but it impresses people. And if you can't do that, if you can't get the annual and memorize everybody's picture and what they do, then you need to go around the room. Get an early win. Present something. When I say an early win, don't pick the hardest thing, biggest problem they have. Something, like you got a teacher a chair. Get an early win. Establish that you're a competent person. If you lose the first two or three things you try, even if you get better down the road, you're just a blind squirrel that found an acorn. And even they find one every now and then. Establish that you're a competent person. Present something positive to the staff. Give a quick overview of who you are. I said quick. And professional experience. Again, that goes back to the cat lady. Don't tell too much. Volunteer for something nobody else wants to do. Do as I do. Lend a hand. Be a servant leader. Present the opening of school plan and be conversant. The principal will let you in that required work day. Smile and laugh at the appropriate times. Ask questions and take notes. Carry a pad in your pocket. I carry one all the time. I used to give them to my APs as gifts. Write it down. If you can't remember it, write it down. Recognize someone for something positive that you've seen. Be specific. I saw how you set up your room or your learning centers, and call them by name. Don't just say, "I went by so-and-so that was really, really nice." Well, I don't know if you went by their room or not. All you can say, "It was really nice." If you say their learning centers were well organized, that means that you meant it, that you actually saw it. Don't complain or seem worried about being ready for the opening of school. Kids will show up and school will open whether you're ready or not. Don't wet your pants. If you panic, everybody else will panic. And then lastly, don't ever mention how busy you are or how hard you're working. That's the expectation. You're the one that wanted to be in school leadership. That is the expectation, that you'll be busier and work harder than everybody else. They're going to pay you more too. So this is what you need to do at your first faculty meeting. That first faculty meeting, unfortunately, may be the most important meeting you have in your career, because it's the first. If you can get it off on the right foot, you have the opportunity to get your career started. But if you go and fall flat on your face at that first faculty meeting, again, people make snap judgments. You know how that works. I hate it, but it's just the truth. So if you can appear, even just appear to be a competent person, a can-do, somebody that gets things done, write it down. Again, that's what we expect LS people to do. We expect them to get stuff done. We don't expect them to be great thinkers. We expect them to be great doers. Now, is that pejorative? Is that fair? Again, there is no such thing as fair in adult life. That's where you go in the fall of the year to get a corn dog and ride the Ferris wheel. There is no fair. LS people are expected to do things, to get things done. That's why they hire us. They don't hire us to think. Don't think you're hurting the team. We're not supposed to be great thinkers. We're supposed to be great doers. We hire curriculum people like you to be great thinkers. Now, if you can marry the two, then you can go far in this business. But if you have to pick one as an LS person, you better be a doer. You better be a person that gets stuff done, that wins, that delivers. Because at the end of the day, that's how you're evaluated as an LS person, not by how smart you are, but how hard you work and what your results are. I don't make the rules. I just acknowledge what they are. All right. So that's interviewing. Now, a lot of these will translate over to other jobs other than assistant principal. There's some common threads in all of these kinds of things. Strengths and weaknesses, no matter what job, being honest about the hours, coming dressed appropriately, knowing the strategic plan, knowing the group that you're interviewing to be a part of, trying to get early wins, being conversant, knowing, remembering people's names. Those kinds of things are common to any interview. But in curriculum, I'm not sure that you're going to have many interviews where they don't have you do something with data or a lesson plan, or where you have to demonstrate a skill is what I'm saying. It may not be a data dive, but they're more than likely going to have you demonstrate a skill. Be prepared for that. Don't freak out. Don't wet your pants. Our goal every day is to go home with dry pants. It's a win if we went home with dry pants every day. We didn't lose our grip. We didn't panic. If you panic, everybody else panics worse than you. Got to understand that. Got to be a duck. Calm on the surface. You might be paddling hard underneath, but you got to be calm on the surface. And they're going to be looking for that when they're hiring people at any leadership. You can't be henny penny. You got to be able to hold your water. No wet pants. All right. What have I missed? I am really looking forward to your case studies. Now, I hope that y'all won't be too thin-skinned when I wear you out on the case studies. But I believe y'all will do great. I really do. But remember, we're talking about law. This is, case studies in law are not opinion. There's a right and a wrong, unfortunately, sometimes. There's a legal way and to do these things. But I know that y'all will do great. I'm looking forward to it. Let's see. We ate at Jason's last time, didn't we? What are we going to do special we got to do something special our last weekend. What are we going to do special our last weekend? Y'all be thinking about that. We got to do something special to commemorate our time together. All right. That's enough for tonight. I've had the time of my life. I've never felt this way before. I'm in Lake Lure tonight. That's from Dirty Dancing. They filmed it right out here I'm at the resort tonight. Right here at the beach where they didn't film the scene where he held her up at the beach at Lake Lure. They filmed it at the beach at the resort right out there. My wife watches that. People from this part of the world think that's a documentary, by the way. And so my wife watches it every week, that and Urban Cowboy. They come on TBS every week. And so we'll close with that tonight. It's good to see you as always. I will see you Saturday week in Charlotte, and we'll figure out something fun to do. I'll see you then. Thank you for your time. Good night.